So in this video, we're going to be covering the stone fill tab. And there's basically two functions that we're going to cover in this video, which is our island fill options and the offset nudge options here in stone fill. Now we do have some other fill options that we're in the process of implementing, which we haven't completely finished. So we won't be talking about the grid fill or the auto match fill. And there's one other button here that's missing, which is the random fill, but those haven't been fully implemented, so we won't be covering all of those features there. But we will talk about the island fill and the offset and nudge functions. So let's first of all go ahead and draw out a circle. And let's just talk a little bit about how island fill works. Now over here there's a numerical field that says 2.8, and that is automatically calculated and determined by the stone size and the spacing. Now of course we can use these up-down arrows, or we could just enter a value, and we could override the default if we wanted to. But anytime we change, that default automatically updates for us automatically. So that's kind of a nice function there. So why do we want to use 3.7 when we're using island fill? Well, let me show you how this works. If I choose to add stones and I click on the island fill button, what happens is Easy Stone will automatically create a number of circles to the inside, and the spacing between each row is this 3.7. So you have the size of your stone plus the spacing between stones would give us 0.5 of a millimeter between each row. Now again, we can change that if we needed to. So for example, let's say I wanted to change that to 6, and we'll choose add stones and island fill. Now you can see we get just a bigger spacing between, and there are certain cases, or obviously that could be quite useful. And then I can just go back in and change the stone size, and that brings us back to our default stone size there. Now there also is another numerical field right next to that, where if we choose an up-down arrow, that determines the number of steps. So for this example here, I could take this existing oval, and when I choose 3 and I add stones, I can click on island fill, and it will create 3 additional rows for me. Now I'm actually going to come in and select the 2 middle rows here and change my color, and come over to my stone tab and just choose, we're going to actually change the size too, and when I click add stones, you can see what happens. Those 2 middle ones, automatically those 2 get changed to a different color and a different size, which again certainly can be very useful as well. So we'll go ahead and get rid of those. So that's another option for us. Let's go back to our stone fill tab here. Now we can also choose the island fill without adding stones, and it's just going to add circles for us, which can be very useful as well. And likewise, we can also go to the outside by holding down the shift key and clicking island fill, and that would create a series of rows based on our number count to the outside. Now if for some reason we didn't specify a step value and we clicked on shift island fill, we're telling it we want to go to the outside, but it warns us, hey, you can't do that because you haven't defined how many offsets that you want to the outside. So it will warn you when you make mistakes in that fashion. So that shows you all of the island fill options. Now down below, this cluster of boxes here are the offset and nudge options. So let's go ahead and drop a stone. So there's a stone to work with. And just like with the island fill, we have a default value based on the stone size and spacing. So we'll go back here. And if we choose this up arrow, you can see that it automatically just creates that spacing that we need between, which again may or may not be useful. Let's go back in here and drop that stone again. There we go. So now we have the proper size stone, so when we offset, you can see we get just a half a millimeter between each of our stones. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that a couple of times. Now we could tell it, hey, you know what, I want 3 sets of these to the left. And you can see what it did. It created 3, whatever I had selected, it created 3 of to that. In this case, it just offset that one. But if I said, hey, take this, give me 2 up, it creates 2 sets of those in the vertical direction. So that can be useful. Now let's talk about something that's kind of complicated, but not terribly complicated. So first thing we're going to do is going to select this button, go to the right. That will create another one. If I hold down my Alt button and go to the right, that actually creates a nudge of this value. If I hold down Alt plus my Shift, that will create a double nudge. So you can see we have one row and then placement. So we'll do that all the way around. We'll offset, we'll hold down the Alt key, offset, we'll hold down the Alt key and Shift key, double nudge up. Same thing over here. So we go down, we can Alt down, that's a nudge, and Alt Shift is a double nudge. And one more time. So offset, Alt, offset, Alt, Shift, double offset. All right, so now we can take these, and when we come in here and do Shift Add Stones, we will break those stones apart. Shift Add Stones, break those stones apart. Shift Add Stones, break those stones apart, and Shift Add Stones. So now we can create this outline of stones that way. So it's a very useful feature. It has lots of different practical applications. Now there is one feature that we didn't talk about, and that is in regards to the nudge option. If I hold down my Alt key and I hold down my Shift key, we know that we get a double nudge. We could hold down my Alt key and my Control key and get a half a nudge. So there is that option as well. So a full nudge is the Alt, a half a nudge is the Alt Control, and a double nudge is Alt Shift. And there's are all different reasons why that could be useful. So now that you have a pretty good understanding of how the island fill functions work and how the offset and nudge functions work here inside EasyStone.